Justin. I hope everybody's well today. Hi, Anita. I see you. You look very familiar. I know you've been here before. Thank you so much, Justin, for having me. And let's just go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to share my screen. And this is going to be, it's a pretty, um, had to add some other things to my to the presentation. Now I want to make sure that you can actually see this. I want to be able to see,
Yep, I can see it.
you can see it,
And
but
oh,
I am having, I think I need to change because I can only see the small screen now. I want to see the big screen. Let me see. Hold on. I think I need to share the other. Uh, Hold on. It's sharing the wrong side. Oh, here we go. I guess this one I want to see. Okay. Can you all see that?
yes.
Okay, great. So, today we are going to talk about debt, and I'm just going to just give you a quick rundown about me. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm a caregiver. I have three children. I am neurodivergent. I'm a money coach. I love coffee and overcast rainy days. Today in Washington, it's a bit cooler. I wish it would rain because I love the coziness of the rain. And I am currently reading a Star Wars novel based on the character Thrawn. I always like to share something about what I'm up to outside of money coaching because I think it's really important to not have that as being my only identity. So, let's just get into some of the statistics here. So, there is a lot of household debt in the United States, as you can see from the slide. We have more than $18 trillion of just household debt. And the average consumer debt is $104,000, and that is mostly due to having a mortgage. Um, the average credit card debt is $6,500, and the average medical debt is higher than that because healthcare is so expensive in this country. There are all kinds of debts. We've got mortgage debt, which includes, first and second homes, home equity loans, consumer debt, auto loans, personal loans, collections, and of course, student loans. Our debt and our health are intimately linked. So I went through several hard periods throughout my life before middle age where I didn't recognize or see the connection between my physical health, my mental health, and my debt. I always knew, and I think anybody who's been in debt knows that the stress that it can cause, and you start to feel that in a lot of different ways. It can cause headaches, it can cause gut issues, it can cause tension in your body. And so it's really important to understand that connection between the different aspects of your health and debt. And that's why it's so important also to have support. It's really scary to talk about debt. It's such a taboo subject. Money is a taboo subject in general, but talking about debt is almost like we know that we're going to be judged because, why couldn't you handle your money or why did you spend so much? But the truth is that debt is so much more complex than that, and we are not our debt. And that's something that I really, really hope that in throughout this presentation, and if you review the slides afterwards or the video afterwards, you come to that realization that debt is just a thing and you are a person. Your worth as a person is not determined by your debt. So dealing with debt can come in a bunch of different ways. You can consolidate, you can do balance transfers, you can refinance, you can do debt management plans, and the ultimate way of dealing with debt is, of course, bankruptcy. And that's something that I used to be afraid of. And then I had to face bankruptcy myself twice. And I am proof that you can recover from something like that. Sometimes it's the only way that you can deal with your debt, and it's a tool, and it's a legal tool that's available to use if you have exhausted every other option and that's all you have left to work with. So the first thing we're going to talk about is refinancing. So you can apply to refinance your mortgage, a personal loan, or an auto loan. And by doing that, you can, the intention there is to reduce the interest rate, which would reduce your overall payment. So that's one way of dealing with this kind of debt, which probably is the largest debt. You know, your mortgage typically is the largest debt that you have, or even a home equity line of credit. Um, but one thing that I would suggest is that if you are able to make that debt payment, but you just want to pay a lower rate, then refinance, get your lower rate, which equals a lower monthly payment, but continue making the same payment you were making before so that you can further reduce your debt faster. That's only if you're able to do that. Some people just aren't able to do that. They need to refinance for a lower monthly payment because they need that lower monthly payment. But that's just one way for a lot of people to just, reduce their overall debt in a shorter period of time. The second thing is loan consolidation. And while I'm a fan of loan consolidation, but there are some things to know beforehand. You need to, it results in a lower overall interest rate, which will make your monthly payment shorter. Instead of making 5 or 6 different payments to different creditors, you're making one monthly payment. The danger here, and that I always want to point out to people, is that if you have 5 credit cards and you take out a personal loan to pay off those 5 credit cards, then you need to make sure that you don't start using those 5 credit cards, because then you're going to have that debt plus the loan that you consolidated when the consolidation loan from the first time you had the debt on the credit cards. And so I always tell people that before thinking about consolidating, like with a home equity loan, or with a consolidation loan, like a personal loan, you have to deal first with how that other debt was racked up in the first place. Because until you deal with that, there's no point in doing a consolidation loan, because then you're going to end up with probably about twice the amount of debt. Um, so that's always something to really think about when you're doing that. Um, the other thing about I'm going to go back to this other slide. The thing about the home equity line of credit is that if you um, miss payments, and uh, if you don't pay it, then you could put your home in danger of being foreclosed. A home equity line of credit is usually, it comes right after your main mortgage, right? You have your mortgage and then you would have your home equity line of credit. And but the bank that holds the loan for the home equity line of credit for the money that you owe could begin foreclosure proceedings. Now, I'm not clear, it depends on the state, and the terms of your agreement, but you don't want to have that happen. It's the same principle also with getting a personal loan to consolidate your loans. You end up you have to deal with the issue of how that credit debt or the collections debt got racked up in the first place. You have to deal with that before you put your home on the line with a home equity line of credit. Okay, so balance transfers are advertised all over the place. If you go on to any financial education website like Investopedia, Bankrate, or NerdWallet, they will have like this month's best transfer rates for, like let's say you have a Capital One card that you're paying 24% interest rate, 24% on, and you found Discover has a 0% introductory rate. That's all fine, but you have to be approved, first of all, for the Discover card. Second of all, if you want to transfer that Capital One balance to that 0% Discover card, you have to, that Discover card is going to have to be, give you a large enough limit to cover that so that when you transfer, it covers that whole balance. There are usually fees associated with a balance transfer. It's usually like maybe 1% of the balance that you're transferring or like or a flat fee. If you pay late on that 0% card, they may give you leeway and say, okay, the first one you can be late, but on the second time you're late, we're gonna take away that 0% interest rate, and we're going to charge you the regular interest rate. The other thing is that these are limited. So the 0% or the introductory rate usually is for a limited amount of time. It's like 18 to 24 months typically, depending on the card. 12 to 18 months. Also, if you decide that you're going to transfer your Capital One balance to your Discover balance and you pay your 0% interest, if you buy something then with that Discover card, typically you'll pay the regular interest rate. The 0% interest rate is usually just for transfers because they want your business, but then you want to just not charge anything additional because then you're just going to end up paying that higher interest rate. All right, so then the next one is a debt management plan. So the way this works is that you can usually find a credit counseling agency like through your bank or your credit union or online. And what these agencies do is that they will ask you for a list of all of your debts, the account numbers, the balances, and all that. And then what they'll do is that they can negotiate with your creditors and they can say, okay, so um, they're paying 24% interest. Let's lower that to, can you lower that to 10% and waive all the late fees so that the balance goes down a little bit. So as you're doing this, as they're negotiating for you, you make a one-time monthly payment to the credit agency and they will send the payments out as agreed to whoever you owe money to, whether it's collections or medical bills or whoever that they, decide to put into your plan. Um, Sometimes there's a fee. It depends on the agency. It depends on, on how you negotiate with them. And it will be typically it is reported on your credit report that your credit card is being paid or it was paid off or your debt was paid off via a debt management plan, which isn't the end of the world. It's just something that shows future creditors that you were struggling at one time and this is how you made your payments. Um, but that's only important if you are sometime in the future within 7 years of starting the debt management plan. That's only important if within that time you want to apply for credit for, a home or a car loan or something like that. But if your intent is to I just want to focus, I want to get out of debt, I need help, then, this might be an option for you. Um, you have to read the rules. If you miss a payment or if you pay late, they may void their agreement and then they may kick you off the plan. It all depends on the agency and the agreement that you have with them when you are making your payments with this through this plan. Okay, and then the next one is bankruptcy. So I've written a couple blog posts. I've talked about bankruptcy. I was interviewed in the New York Times about bankruptcy. And bankruptcy is like a really, really scary word. Budget and bankruptcy, those are the two B's that people really, really hate to talk about when it comes to finances. And I was afraid of it too. and it was really scary. It was very shaming. And it took me a long time to realize and understand that it exists as a tool to help you work through whatever it is that you need help with. Chapter 7 will eliminate most, if not all, consumer debt. It will eliminate anything that's unsecured, like a personal loan that isn't secured. Um, and because it goes further with helping you deal with your debt. It stays on your credit report and your public record for a longer period of time. Um, Chapter 13 is basically restructuring your debt, is where they take all of your debt and you make monthly payments to a trustee. And that plan usually lasts 3 to 5 years. You file, hopefully, through an attorney, with an attorney and not on your own. Um, And that's what I used to try to stop foreclosure on my home. The Chapter 13. I filed twice, and both times my petitions were dismissed. They were not allowed to go through because the trustee didn't think that I was going to be able to make the payments for the 3 to 5 years that they were recommending. And so even if your petition is dismissed by the court, it still stays on your credit report and on your public record from the date of filing. So I actually celebrated my seventh year from my second bankruptcy petition. My seventh year passed in March, and so now I have no bankruptcies on my records at all. And my credit score it's shot up. It's super high right now. So it took a long time and it was a really difficult decision, but in the end, you know, I used bankruptcy as a tool to help me work through some difficult things, and it didn't destroy me. And I thought it would, but it didn't. And so I don't want to encourage people to just start filing for bankruptcy just, because it's easy or whatever, because it's not. There's a lot of heartache that goes into it, a lot of thinking that goes into it, and it really should be used, I believe, as a last resort. And I also want to say that it's a tool, that it's a legal tool to help you, and that there's no shame in using that tool to help relieve the pressure of debt. Um, it's a very hard decision to make. So, and I do recommend going through an attorney and talking about your options. All right, so this is what we are going to do. So when you're dealing with debt, you're dealing with a lot of different things. You're dealing with money, you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with your health, you're dealing with your day-to-day life. And so it's very, very important to seek help and to accept help when it's offered. And think about what that looks like for you. Maybe you have enough income to pay your debt, but just seeing those bills come through on your email or in the mail just too much because you have so much going on otherwise. So have somebody sit with you or join an online group that purports to just give you space and the time to do nothing but focus for 1 hour every 2 weeks or once a month and just sit there and, open up your bills just so that you can see what's there. And then you can begin the process of saying, okay, I have this bill, it needs to be paid, and what's the first step I need to take in order to pay this thing so that it's not weighing on me. You can also have somebody sit with you while you make a phone call to the credit card company to say, hey, I lost my job last week. I was laid off. I need some kind of, what can you do for me? How can I, can I skip a payment or can I, uh, what options are there for people in my situation? I mean, I can't even imagine what federal workers had to go through when they were laid off en masse last year. Um, they had to make these phone calls, and maybe it would have been a little bit easier if they had somebody just sit with them as support, just silently sitting there while they got on the phone to ask for some kind of assistance. Um, you can develop a script. There are a lot of sample scripts online where you can that you can use to say this is what happened to me. I've paid my bills on time all the time that I've been a customer. I've never been late with a payment, or I've only been late once or twice over the past 10 years. Um, can you reduce my interest rate? Can I skip a couple payments? Or can you help me come up with some kind of a plan? By having something written down before you call, you are able to then, use the best words. You can be more succinct when you are calling and maybe get a little bit further with the customer service representative. It can also help alleviate some stress because you're prepared and because you know what you're going to ask for. The other thing is to apply for assistance, depending on your state and depending on your income. Um, Apply for utility assistance. It may not be 100% coverage, but maybe you could get a discounted utility, or you can be on a payment program where instead of paying every 2 months, you're paying every month because the bill is cheaper. I know that Seattle City Light, I think it's Seattle City Light or Seattle Public Utilities, they bill every 2 months, but they have a program, or they used to have a program where you could pay monthly instead of every 2 months to make the bills a little bit more manageable and not so hard to pay all at once. When you are looking at debt, you really need to prioritize. And if that means writing down what the priorities are, then that's what you have to do. Paying your rent or your mortgage is far more important than paying off a department store credit card. Um, because the last thing you want to do is to be struggling to make all these payments all at once when really the focus should be on the roof over your head. Because the department store credit card people aren't going to come, hopefully, aren't going to come knocking on your door for a $500 balance that you owe them. And they will be easier to work with most of the time than your mortgage servicer. Communication. So I did some research and I was looking around, and for one of the things that people are one of the largest drivers of consumer debt these days is the BNPL, buy now, pay later apps like Klarna, Afterpay, I think Affirm is the other one. And because that's such a huge thing now, I went onto each of their websites to see what kinds of options they have for people who are in debt. There are people who are hundreds and thousands of dollars in debt with these buy now, pay later companies. And they do have a section where they tell you that they can work with you if you've have a job, if you've lost your job or you have an emergency or you're facing financial hardship. I didn't personally call them to find out what they would do, so I don't know how helpful they are. I don't know if what they say on their websites reflects that. But the most important thing you can do is to communicate one way or another with whoever you owe money to let them know that you are facing financial hardship and that you are willing to pay, you want to pay, but that you need some kind of a system or program or a settlement or something that will help you pay them so that you can pay them what you owe. Um, that's one of the things that I learned the hard way was not communicating, because one of the things that's really difficult for me is talking on the phone, like picking up the phone and talking and saying, "Hey, I need help with something." I'm better now, But before, when I was facing foreclosure and when I was having all these financial problems, it was really hard for me. And I had these like mental blocks where it was really difficult to pick up the phone. And so I would just leave it until the last minute. And then I would just be in this perpetual cycle of hurrying and stressing myself out um, and even forgetting, oh, I need to make the phone call. Oh, the deadline is tomorrow. So however it works for you to best communicate, communicate. All right. Making payment arrangements. So breaking up payments. So like either breaking up payments, spreading out payments, the changing the payment due date. I realized when I think it was about 2 years ago, I was trying to figure out how to pay my extortionate rent. Um, but at the same time, I was having to pay off my credit card because I pay it off in full every month. And I don't get paid once a month. I get paid, biweekly. And I was trying to figure out how to make all this stuff work. And then it occurred to me, I'll just call the credit card company and change the due date. It turned out I could do it through the app. And a lot of places will allow you to do that, will allow you to change the due date. So if changing the due date is something that would help alleviate or free up funds, then do that. That's just a really good way to, kind of spread the pain out a little bit, so to speak. But it also is a good way to it also helps you plan so that you don't have everything due at the beginning or the end of the month. You can spread it out so you've got some things due in the middle of the month, or depending on how you get paid or how you receive your payments. Um, Getting support. So a lot of times, because money is so taboo and debt is even like a bigger taboo, we tend to believe or assume that we're the only ones that are facing this thing. We're the only ones who are incapable of managing our money. We're the only ones who have all this debt. And the reason we believe that is because nobody talks about it. And one of the best things we can do um, is to be open with somebody who is a safe space for us and say, um, you know, I have this debt. I have debt. Um, and you might be surprised because they may have debt as well that they didn't want to talk about. Um, or going onto an online forum, that is a safe space. I don't know that I would go on to something like Reddit or Facebook, where people can be very, very cruel, but you want to go to a place that's supportive. So either in person or online, and be open, be open about that. There's even Debtors Anonymous, which grew out of Alcoholics Anonymous. There were people who realized that they were having trouble managing their money, because of their addiction to alcohol. And so they started Debtors Anonymous. So it's based on kind of like on the same principles. So if that's something that could work for you, that's another option. It's another place to just go and not feel so alone. So debt settlement is another thing, is another way to reduce and pay off debt. And the way that works is that if you um, have something in collections, um, for, I don't know, $1,000, you can call up the collections people and say, hey, I have this financial hardship. I really need to find a way to, I want to pay this bill off. I can't afford the $1,000, especially with the interest that's accruing and all the fees. I would like to know if you would accept a payment. Can I pay you $750 instead of $1,000? And you would consider the case closed. Sometimes the collections people will send you a letter and say, hey, you know, you haven't been paying this off. Do you want to, if you want, we can settle this and you can pay us 40% of the debt. Yes, it's going to be reported on your credit report as not having been, um, paid as agreed, and it'll show that you paid, that you settled, but it's one way to just get it off your back, and it'll be gone in 7 years. And believe me, 7 years flies. But if you don't want to do that, then just call them and make payment arrangements and ask, if you can pay off that $1,000 debt over a period of time. Maybe ask for a reduced interest rate or ask them to waive any late fees and tell them you're going to start making payments um, under some kind of agreement that you have with them. Um, the last two things I put on here are basically increase your income and reduce your income. Two things that are really, really hard to do, especially in this economy. It's not always easy to increase your income. And if you're on public benefits, you have that to deal with as well because you have a limit to how much you can have. And also, if you already have a full-time job and you're still not able to make ends meet, increasing your income by getting a part-time job or getting a side hustle is going to sap your time and your energy. But it's something that you can think of as a temporary fix to get rid of, one or two debts or to help alleviate some of your debt. Think of it as a temporary thing, not as a full-time thing. You're not going to work the rest of your life, at this part-time job in addition to your full-time job. Um, if it doesn't work after 2 weeks, then you can just quit. But increasing your income is one way to help obviously put more money toward debt. The other one is reducing your income. But I like to say that there's a limit to how much you can reduce your income. You could cut off all the streaming services. You could reduce your mobile phone plan. You could stop eating out for 3 months, but you can't save your way. When you have a certain income, you can't just save away the debt, meaning that you can only reduce so much. And if you take away every single thing that brings you joy, that could backfire and put you back in a situation um where you're back to where you started. And I don't like to tell people that they have to give up their Netflix or their Spotify just to pay off debt because we do deserve, no matter what our income level is, we do deserve to have a little bit of joy and something to just take the edge off, even for an afternoon. So that's a personal choice. There are substitutions, like through the library. There are other lower cost things you can do. You can share, um, you know, you can share accounts with people, split the difference. But that's something that really is a personal thing. And I'm not going to tell somebody, that you have to cut out every single thing that brings you happiness to pay off debt. All right. One of the things that I do that I've done for a number of years now that really helps me be more intentional about where my money goes is by tracking expenses. And that means writing down, saving receipts and just keeping a list by category of where my money goes. And if I had done this back when I was facing financial hardship, then I would have realized that I was spending money in places that didn't align with my values. And one of those values was to get out of debt. I wasn't paying attention to where my money was going. Tracking your expenses or going back 3 months on your bank statements or your credit card statements can be a real eye opener. You can be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I spent so much money on X thing, which is contributing to my debt. So maybe I'm going to reduce that a little bit and see, how I feel and look at it and just do a continuous like a audit of where my money is going. Um, if you can cut back, throw a little bit of extra money toward your debt. In one of the future slides, I'm going to show you two different popular ways of paying off debt. that work pretty well and would work even better if you were able to throw $20 more a month toward one of your monthly debt payments. I do put on here to continue your savings goals, and one of the reasons why I say that is because a lot of times we think, oh, I just use my credit card for emergencies. But if you have money in your savings account, then you won't reach for the credit card. And that'll help reduce spending on your credit card and just keep replenishing your savings. All right, so this slide there's a lot of information on this slide. So you'll be able to review it later when you get the PDF of the slides. But basically, there are two very popular ways of paying off debt. You can use one, then switch to the other, or you can do a combination, or just do it, however it works for you. But this is the way they work. So the avalanche method is more for helping you save money on interest. So you list your debts from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. With Snowball, it's more motivational. You list your balances from lowest to highest. So if you have a balance, five different debts, let's say the first one is for $56, then you have another one for 78, then another one for 300, then another one for 500. By getting rid of them visually, you're eliminating the number of debts that you have, and then you can think, oh, I only have one credit card debt and one auto loan debt. Rather than I've got collections, I've got my department store card, I've got my buy now, pay later, I've got this, all these things. So it can make you feel like, oh, I have less, not necessarily I have less debt, I just have I have, I can put more of my effort into paying off the debts that I have because I've already gotten rid of all those other little debts. And so on the charts here, it shows making the minimum payment on everything until you've paid the first one off on the list. But if you're able to put even $20 a month more per month on the first debt, and then you take that amount and then you add it to the next debt, you're going to pay your things off a lot faster. And so I tried to make the instructions as clear as possible because it can be kind of confusing. So just, really look at it. And like I said, it can be, think about what your goals are. Are you wanting to get rid of the number of debts that you have, or do you want to save money on interest? Sometimes people will be like, they'll have 10 different debts that they owe, and they'll just quickly pay off like 3 or 4 of them using the snowball method, and then they'll use the avalanche method for the rest. So it's up to you what you want to do, but they can be pretty effective, depending on, on what your goals are. All right. So medical debt is tricky. There are a lot of options to help pay off medical debt. And one of them involves, first of all, making sure that you are looking at, oh, I left off one of the heading on that one. Oh, okay. Here we go. So read over the bill. Are you getting billed correctly? Are you the person who actually had that lab test done, or did somebody else get, did the codes get mixed up? Did somebody else get your bill? Did you get somebody else's bill? Make sure that you are reading your bills correctly and your explanation of benefits. That's what comes from the insurance that says, this is what we covered, this is what you owe, and this is what it was for. Make sure that it matches the bill that you get from the clinic and or your doctor. And then call them up and ask, is there anything I can do to reduce this? How can you help me with this? If you pay cash rather than with a credit card, can they reduce the bill by 5 or 10%? Can you get a cheaper medication? Can you have a different treatment that would do the same thing? A lot of these questions have to be done before the visit, but um, I noticed at the University of Washington, really a couple of years ago, they started posting when you go into the clinic, they started posting and sending emails that you have a right to ask for an estimate of the charges that you're going to have sent to you for whatever service or visit you're going to have done at the clinic. They used to not do that. I don't know how long ago they started to do that, but it's a way to inform people of to help people so they don't end up surprised by what's coming in the mail. Applying for financial assistance, charity care. A lot of people don't know that any hospital that receives federal funding has to offer some kind of financial assistance program, and you can apply for that. You can call them up and say, hey, I need to apply for charity assistance. The next one is see if you qualify for Medicaid. If you apply for Medicaid, they'll ask you if you have any medical bills, and they go back, I think it's 3 months that they go back. You can hire a patient advocate to go over your bills. This is a person who will go over all your bills, but they will charge you a fee. And then the next one is there's an organization. I met the founder of this organization, and I'd heard about them through one of my financial coaching network meetings. $4 is a nonprofit organization that helps people across the country. They have uh, not really agreements, but they have access to they're able to help people get their apply for charity care at like over 1,600 hospitals and clinics across the country. You can apply on their website. You'd enter all of your information on their website, upload your bills, whatever, and then they will help you. They will help connect you with the patient financial services people, and they will help you get your bills paid off or completely reduced. All right. So tips to stop accruing credit card debt, pretty self-explanatory. Unsubscribe from emails and texts, pay with cash, remove bookmarks and apps from your phone and from your computer, remove the credit card. If you're in bed scrolling, it's too easy to just hit purchase on something when your credit card is already in the app. But if you have to get out of bed, pull out your wallet, go back to your bed, whatever, and enter the information, you're less likely to be spending. It's harder because you're just like, it's 2 in the morning. I'm not going to get out of bed to buy this thing that's in my cart. Review your subscription purchases and start canceling. A lot of times we have subscriptions to games or streaming services and we forgot that we had them, and we don't use them, so cancel them. Use your library for access to movies, audiobooks, and music for free. You can do that online. And then remember to build up your savings so that you don't go for the credit card when you have an emergency. All right, where to get help? There are lots of places to get help. Um, the list is self-explanatory. Financial counseling and coaching. There are also financial therapists. There's a financial therapist network where you can look up to see people who are qualified to offer financial therapy and to help you work through your debt and your feelings of, how did I get here? How do I get out of this? Debtors Anonymous, the debt management program, credit counseling, debt settlement, and bankruptcy attorney. Debt is a number. Here's your recap. It is not a reflection of your worth as a person. Find the best debt payoff method for your circumstances. Snowball, avalanche, credit transfer, HELOC, whatever it is, read the fine print. Get support, reduce and eliminate credit card use, and again, have money in an emergency fund for to avoid using your card for emergencies. It's too easy to pull that card out for an emergency tire puncture or water heater. And that's it. There was a lot of information, and I know I had to go through that really fast. Thank you so much for your patience and for watching.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. That was amazing. I'm gonna stop the recording
Okay.
so we can ask some questions.